Hey everyone, how are you all doing? Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Marvel Legends Model 20 Iron Man from the retro wave that's coming out right now. Technically, I guess, part of the 90s, like, retro wave, kind of how we had, like, the X-Men 97 and we have, like, the retro X-Men stuff as sort of a homage to the Toy Biz, like, 90s era kind of stuff. And speaking of Toy Biz homages, this, in spirit, is an upgrade to the modern armor Iron Man, the one that I have been talking about for years, and some of you have had no idea what I was talking about because I just kept saying I can't wait for them to make the modern armor Iron Man, and people were like, the so-and-so armor is a modern armor, and I'm like, yes, I know, but I'm talking about the modern armor Iron Man, aka the Toy Biz Iron Man that was called the modern armor Iron Man, and that is what this is right here, but upgraded beautifully by Hasbro. And I'm so happy to have this. This look for Tony with pretty much just like an upgraded version of that Toy Biz figure is exactly like my mind's eye of what I grew up with in terms of the suit for Iron Man, kind of, because I grew up with the, like, during the comic book era, like the Civil War kind of era, so we had like the Pentagon armor, the Extremis armor, like that kind of stuff, and like the Model 20 and all that stuff, but I never really could distinguish in my brain when I was a kid the difference between the Pentagon armor and the Model 20. So they both kind of have now different areas of nostalgia for me, because this one is like nostalgic for the Toy Biz figure, and then the Pentagon armor is my comic book Tony. And this figure is going to be super easy for them to reuse and make the Pentagon armor, which I'll get into here in a little bit. But without further ado, let's just get into what Tony comes with. So as you can see on him right now, he comes with a pair of fists, which these look really nice. He has the arc reactors painted on here. Unfortunately, they're not painted on the forearms, but that's not a really big deal. It's just kind of strange, because why is it painted on the hands, but not the forearms themselves? But it's okay. And the hands, they have you can see the arc reactor inside, all the detailing for the individual, like, plates on his fingers. These are hinged, so they can go, up, but they are hard, which we'll talk about that in a second. But those are a pretty solid pair of fists. And then he also comes with a pair of, because, of course it's Iron Man, so he has to come with a pair of repulsor hands. And these look great as well. Pretty much the same exact detailing goes for that, except for they have the peg holes for the repulsor blast, which we will get into as well. But thankfully, there's no paint slop when it comes to the actual little reactors on the backs of these. These look really good. I do like how these turned out. And the worst thing about these hands, and it's a big, big pitfall for me when it comes to this figure, unfortunately, but it's not something that I really care about, because I don't know, it just kind of depends on the Iron Man, but I like to pose him with fists sometimes, most of the time actually, but for whatever reason, they decided to make the hands, like these little rubber pads on here, super hard, so you can't really get a proper repulsor blast with the actual effects, which he comes with 4 of these, by the way, so let's just get those out of the way. He comes with 4 of these guys, which these pegs are huge, and they go in here like so, and then they just kind of point down, because you can't really get the hand itself to go forward unless you raise his arm all the way up. So that's a huge bummer, but for me personally, it's not something that I'm too terribly upset by, because I mean, like, it shouldn't have happened, and they should have definitely done something different to fix it, but I'm gonna display them like this, with the fists and everything. This is just my mind's eye of my Iron Man from when I was a kid. So pulling Tony in for a closer look, let's actually turn him a little bit closer to the camera. There we go, or towards the light, because then we can actually get a little bit more shadow and depth going on here. You can see he's got a little bit of detail in the actual helmet itself, which looks really good. This was, for the time, the modern armor, so it's got a lot of, got a lot more. It takes the classic look and modernizes it and adds a lot more detail, makes it a little more techy and everything like that. And they did such a good job. I love the printing for his arc reactor as well. You can see there's like an actual little white circle in there of where the energy source would be, as well as it's also asymmetrical on here for the, like, light coming off of it. So you can see there's a little bit of yellow in this corner, but then it actually kind of beams out on this other side, which looks really good. It looks really nice, especially when you catch it in the right light. He's got the, okay, throwing him around, but he's got the, the eye slits and everything, which look really good. The mask's painted well and all that stuff. It would have been cool as an homage to the Toy Biz one if he had, like, come with a alternate head where you could pop the mask off, but that's pushing it, And as I was saying earlier, the only difference between this and the Pentagon armor is the mid-torso should be all red. That's the only thing that's different other than these fins back here. And these fins, actually, I was kind of messing around with it earlier. You can see, since they are a more pliable material, which is really good, because if he takes a shelf dive, you're not going to have to worry too much about these just snapping clean off, you know? They are ported in here. They're just glued. So if you're wanting to make a Pentagon armor Iron Man, it will not be hard for you to do. Just pop those off, paint that red, Bob's your uncle, call it a day. Which is what I think Hasbro will eventually do. I don't know when, you know, maybe a year or two down the line. So if you can't wait for it, definitely go for it and do that, because I think it would look really nice. And I know some people are going to just absolutely kill it in making a perfect Pentagon armor looking Tony off of this figure. But the gold does carry down onto the legs. These are actually, these like red parts on his legs for his armor, they are just slipped over the top of this. They're probably like grooved in so they can sit properly on here, like the that Vulcan body Cyclops, where he actually has the like grooves inset in the sculpt of it. But that's kind of cool. So if you wanted to, you know, do some customization, you probably could do that. His lower legs are actually not pinless because they have the, you know, he has these right here. So they didn't make it pinless, and they didn't need to. I don't think that's an issue, but I know some people might be a little peeved about that. I just personally am not. I forgot to mention his shoulder pads, but we'll come back and talk about those in a second. His feet look really good as well. These are super pliable, which is super awesome because then you can get a lot of movement forward out of that. So that's really cool. I'm trying to think. It actually kind of looks like it might be the way that the like Stormtrooper shoulder pads are, which is what I wish the shoulder pads are. And it's a great segue into that because unfortunately, the way his shoulder pads are set up, they are set up like the Wolverine figures, where it's just kind of pegged in, which it does really work for Logan. And it's not bad by any means on this figure. I just personally would have preferred that Stormtrooper type look, you know, the Stormtrooper shoulder cap type look thing, because I just think that those work really well. And like if I bring in my Extremis Iron Man, which I don't know if I've showed this off quite a lot or talked about it very much, but I took the Mark III from the movie Iron Man and I put those shoulder pads on here, which look very similar to this. They definitely inspired that heavily off of this, which we all knew that, but still, they are a little bit small. So if I did want to try and put those on here, they would be a little small, but it wouldn't be too bad, I don't think. Color-wise, it would definitely line up, and aesthetically, it would look good. But as is, I think it's fine. It's just something that I personally, you know, wish they would have done, and they didn't end up doing it. That's okay. One thing I also wish they would have done, which we'll talk about that, and then we'll go into the articulation, is I wish that they would give Tony like the Spider-Man setup, because if you're going to give him the diaphragm joint, can you give us an ab crunch? Like, we don't need the waist swivel, you know what I mean? Because we have a swivel up here at his torso, so we don't need one at his waist as well. I would love it if they gave him a ab crunch instead, because imagine like this Tony where he could crunch forward like Spider-Man. That would be so cool. You could get so many cool dynamic poses out of Tony. And especially because of the fact that they've given us so many different Iron Mans where he has a diaphragm joint, and then some of them he has an ab crunch, and then some of them he has that waist cut, you know, like for the Mark I, and it's just, or Model 1, and it's kind of weird, you know, that they can't ever really settle on an articulation scheme for Tony. I know it obviously varies from armor to armor, but I don't know, I just feel like there's definitely something they could do, and aesthetically, with having this right here, you could have easily put an ab crunch in here. And speaking of the articulation, his head actually has a couple of different pieces of articulation in it. So he actually has the disc hinge up top here, so his head can go up that far and down that far. He has a little bit of tilt, but then he also has a neck joint that mostly swivels, but you can get it a little bit forward and a little bit back. There's a little bit of tilt, but it mostly runs into that collar piece up here. As for the shoulders, well, I guess technically we'll go over the shoulder articulation first. So since it is on the those little pegs, it does rotate up and down. So you can get them out of the way, you know, like you can get his arms up to go about that far, and then it does start to run a little bit. But it's not bad by any means. He does have a butterfly joint, so his arms can go that far across, can go that far back, which is not bad at all. Love to see a butterfly joint on a Tony. Love that. As for his torso, this is another reason I want the ab crunch on there as well, because he can only go this far forward. I haven't done any mods or anything to it, and I'm going to try, but I'm going to try to be so careful because I don't want these fins to pop off or warp in any way, but I want him to have more range out of it. Because like back, he can go pretty decent, I feel like, in comparison to that, at least. So, like I said, he does have rotation up here, Mine, I was very scared because it's like, it takes a minute to click into place on certain sides. I do not want that to tear. So I even spun it around a couple times to see if it was just stuck and it was just going to tear on me. I just kind of said screw it and went for it, which was horrifying. And thankfully it has not yet, so knock on wood, hopefully that, you know, doesn't end up happening. But he has a little bit of tilt to the sides as well. The tilt's pretty good, actually. Like I said, he does have a waist swivel as well, which, you know, that breaks up the sculpt. If we had an ab crunch here, wouldn't break up the sculpt. So, I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I'd love to know if you guys think that as well. It would be really cool if we could get that Spider-Man articulation for Tony. He does have a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows that go up that far. We already talked about the hands, but they both sets go back and forth, and then of course swivel, you know, that all that good stuff. His legs go out that far and back that far. He has a thigh swivel, double jointed knees that go back that far. He has an ankle swivel, as well as his ankles being able to go back not very far because they do run into the sculpt. You might be able to finagle that a little bit and like get it past to do it a little bit more. But you're mostly going to get forward because of the fact that this is rubbery right here. And it's weird to me that why is this rubbery, but then up on his hands, that extra piece wasn't, so he can't really get a repulsor hand out of it. I don't know. It's weird. But I love it. I love the articulation on this. I think it could be better, but I think for what it is, it's definitely not bad. And now onto some size comparisons. Here he is next to my custom Ultimate Captain America, and then the Wolverine from the Sabretooth 2-pack with the team suit head on it. And I think these three look great together. Tony's a little bit slimmer, he's a little bit, you know, he's a little bit taller, which he's in a suit of armor, so it's fair enough that he's taller. But I think this looks great. The scaling among the three of them, the proportions among the three of them, I think it looks really solid. And then here he is next to the 80th anniversary Alex Ross version of Iron Man with the Heroes Reborn, I think. It was either Heroes Reborn or Heroes Rebirth. It was one of those two. That head sculpt on there, which I love how that turned out. And then the Extremis armor, which I did, like I said earlier, I switched out the shoulder pads with the Mark III from the movie. And I love the way these three look together. They look like, you know, all part of the same line of suits, like of, you know, the same continuity of suits that Tony's making. Obviously, this one has like a more streamlined kind of real world aesthetic with having like more muted colors and all that, but I love the way these two look together. Especially I love that they look like a natural progression. And then here he is next to the Renew Your Vows Spidey and then the Mafex Gambit, and I really love how this looks as well. I think this Tony will look really good with the Mafex stuff. Overall, I absolutely adore this figure. The only three problems, quote unquote, that I have with the figure are the fact that the repulsor hands, the pads on the backs of those are a little too of a hard plastic, so you can't get too terribly much in terms of a reactor, you know, arc reactor bursting, you know, a repulsor blast type pose out of it. But like I said, he's going to have the fists most of the time for me anyway, so that's not too big for me. The shoulder pads, I wish they would have been the like shoulder cup type piece that we've seen lately, but the way they did it is so much better than like the Extremis where it was just glued onto the lower arms. So I would rather have this than that. So I, you know, can overlook that. And then the ab crunch, I wish that he had a little bit deeper of a crunch because there's not too terribly much movement in there. But that hopefully will be an easy fix, you know, knock on wood, fingers crossed. Hopefully that won't be too much of a process. And I can't wait for them to take this figure and strip it of the fins, repaint the mid-torso, and give us a Pentagon armor, because you know that's coming. That absolutely is coming. And it's going to be a kick-ass figure just like this one is. So, oh yeah, that's going to do it for me, and I will catch you all in the next one. See ya.